manufacturers, because they're delivering things that other competitors at this price just don't. Everything from the free stickers in the box to the subtle attentions to detail to the minimum of 2 years of major Android updates they've promised make it very clear that OnePlus is trying to win customers for the long haul. Anyway, my name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Турки, сумасшедшие. Ну вот наоборот. Наоборот.
Загородный жилой комплекс Екатерининский расположен на юг от Ижевска в 4 километрах по Сарапульскому тракту. В поселке уже проведены и действуют все...
So, there's a good chance that if you clicked on this video, you remember beats. When I was growing up, beats were everywhere. Every street, every corner, every cafe. You couldn't leave the house without seeing beats. And even for the people who couldn't afford them, like me, just the promise of fake beats was tantalizing. So what happened? How is it that within 10 years, Beats went from the brand of people's dreams to this side chick company who just silently pops out a new product every now and again? Well, Beats had an incredible start. The face of the company was this American rapper called Dr. Dre, and one day he looked at Apple and realized, hey, wait a second, this company's out here selling $400 iPods supplied with $1 earphones. He did not like these earphones. Like, as far as Dre was concerned, the only thing they were good enough for was to just check that your sound worked. This was a two-sided coin for him, because on one hand, he took this as a bit of an insult. You know, he's out there in his studio all day, all night, just pouring love into his tracks to make them sound good, but no one could appreciate it. But on the other hand, he saw this as a golden opportunity. So, he took it. Him and his business partner then built a pair of headphones to fill this gap. And because of how they then leveraged all of their celebrity contacts, like right from the very first product, Beats just flew. Like before they even launched their first headphones, they sent out 15 pairs to LeBron James, world famous basketball player. Turns out, these headphones ended up on the heads of every single one of the 2008 Olympic US team. That's ultimate exposure. And it's actually better than paying for adverts, because instead of people rolling their eyes or trying to fast forward, this was the equivalent of people's childhood heroes saying to them, hey, buy these headphones to be more like me. And it was not just basketball players. They gave Nicki Minaj an exclusive set of pink ones. Lil Wayne was sent custom diamond-encrusted ones. They got Justin Bieber on board. Lady Gaga had her own set of earphones made after her. And David Guetta had his own headphones made after him. And here's the clever part. Beats made absolute sure that these guys got their headphones just before they were about to either go on tour, or do a performance, or make a music video, because they knew full well our headphones look cool, and these guys are getting a custom headphone made for them. Of course they're going to want to show them off. But here's the thing. Beats were never the best sounding headphones. They were never the best quality headphones. They were definitely not good value for money. But the one thing they did well was to just target a market that nobody else had targeted before. They recognized that up until this point, premium headphones were just considered an enthusiast's tool. This endless slew of boring-looking black and grey gadgets that were only made for professionals. But by associating with just cool people, and by giving customers so many fun colours and designs to choose from, they created a premium headphone that everyone wanted. Even if it was just to complement an outfit. Now, the other stroke of genius was the simple fact that Beats were tuned to exaggerate bass, which is the main thing that those $1 Apple headphones were lacking. And so for all of those users, people who jumped from those to these, people who never really tried proper high-end headphones, Beats genuinely did sound amazing in comparison. And so, as well as that aspirational effect, that whole seeing your childhood heroes on TV use Beats and wanting them because of that, there was also the secondary effect of consumers recommending Beats to other consumers. And so, within just a few short years, Beats had managed to gain 70% of the premium headphone market. I repeat, 70% by selling headphones that cost just $20 to make. You know what else costs $20 to make? Wish.com phones. And they were just getting started. They then worked with HP to integrate Beats audio into laptops, and HTC to integrate it into phones. They were building their own music subscription service, which is exactly the future that we've moved to now. How do you go wrong from there? Well, in 2014, Beats was bought by Apple. And while it didn't really seem like it at the time, this was the beginning of the end for Beats. On the face of it, this was one of the strangest acquisitions of the decade. Why would Apple, of all companies, spend so much money? This was their biggest acquisition ever, by the way, on a brand of fashion-first headphones that was scoffed at by anyone who really cared about sound. Apple was getting criticized left, right, and center for this acquisition. But let me ask you a question. Which company do you think is the biggest seller of earphones now? It's not Beats. It's Apple. And this acquisition is a big part of why. Apple knew full well in 2014 that wireless earphones were about to explode. They saw this content boom coming. The fact that it feels like almost every person on the planet now uses their smartphone to listen to music or podcasts. Do you think it's getting around a fact from there? Well, in 2014, Beats was bought by Apple.
Нет, значит играть надо играть.
This was the beginning of the end for Beats. On the face of it, this was one of the strangest acquisitions of the decade. Why would Apple, of all companies, spend so much money? This was their biggest acquisition ever, by the way, on a brand of fashion-first headphones that was scoffed at by anyone who really cared about sound. Apple was getting criticized left, right, and center for this acquisition. But let me ask you a question. Which company do you think is the biggest seller of earphones now? It's not Beats. It's Apple. And this acquisition is a big part of why. Apple knew full well in 2014 that wireless earphones were about to explode. They saw this content boom coming. The fact that it feels like almost every person on the planet now uses their smartphone to listen to music or podcasts or watch Netflix shows on. And so they realized preemptively how important a good pair of wireless earphones was going to be. But they didn't want everyone to be using Beats headphones. They want everyone to be using Apple headphones. And so you can probably see where I'm going with this. When Apple bought Beats, they had no intention at all of collabing with them, of making joint products, or really using the Beats brand at all for anything Apple. I think that right from the start, Apple bought Beats with the intention of dissecting them, and basically using all the resources they could gather to fuel Apple products. And that's basically what happened. Apple practically pillaged Beats' audio engineers, their talent, their ideas, their technologies, and used them to make AirPods, AirPods Pro, HomePods, and most recently, AirPods Max. They do still sell Beats. You can go onto the official Apple store, head to the music section, and find Beats products. And Apple has actually equipped those Beats products with Apple-built chips so that they work really well with iPhones. Because why not? The Beats brand still has value in it, so Apple might as well just continue to make profit from it. But you will notice that while they haven't killed it, it really does look like they're letting the Beats brand die. Apple is reinvesting very little in Beats' long-term future. And while they have released some new Beats products, if you look a little closer, you'll see that they've only upgraded ones that don't compete with Apple's own. Like, Apple hasn't refreshed the Beats Pros at all, because they knew full well that they were coming out with their own Pro headphones. They practically left the Beats pill to rot, and they scrapped the smart speaker that Beats was working on too, because Apple needs as little competition as possible in the speaker market. The main two products that they've kept are the sports-focused Power Beats and the fashion-focused over-ear headphones. And that's just because, right now, Apple doesn't have one of its own products to fill those spaces. But you can bet your bottom dollar that the minute they do, Beats are out. Now, you've heard of Apple Music, right? The company's big-budget monthly subscription music streaming service. Well, I'll give you one guess where the foundations of that came from. And if you're enjoying this video, a sub to the channel would be music to my ears. So, I mentioned earlier that just before they were acquired, Beats had built a music streaming service of their own. They called it Beats Music. And I've got to say, one thing it did really well is help people find new songs. Beats had gotten radio hosts and artists themselves on board to create custom playlists. And what that meant for you as a user is that you really felt like you had a friend out there who was handpicking tracks for you. Now, at the same time, Spotify was booming. They were getting millions of paying subscribers a month. And Apple had nothing. Because I think for the longest time, Steve Jobs had this idea that people would always want to own their music. And so even as these music rental services were picking up, Apple just continued to run with their concept of the iTunes Store, where you'd have to buy every track individually, but you do get to keep it forever. But I think it's fair to say that Apple was wrong about this. Spotify and Beats Music made Apple realize that not only was the average consumer becoming more okay with paying a monthly fee to stream music, but also that you could earn way more money by doing this. Instead of having to convince each person to buy each song every time they wanted to, you only need to convince them to subscribe once, and then effectively they're buying from you automatically every month. It's just that by the time Apple realized that they were wrong about this, Spotify was so far ahead that catching up seemed like an impossible task. So, they used Beats Music. They effectively copied Beats' recommendation engine and the entire base that they built, and then they shut it down and started their own Apple Music equivalent, and just built a system so that Beats Music subscribers could easily transfer their subscriptions across. So, to bring this all together, when Apple first acquired Beats, it was a confusing move, because yes, Beats were doing well, but it just kind of seemed like they were two very different companies. But what had actually happened is that Apple foresaw that while these two weren't competitors yet, they were about to be very soon. Apple wanted in on the audio market, and so by buying them out, they could effectively take the things that Beats did well and use them in their own products, but at the same time eliminate a future threat. And I think this acquisition was a big part of why Beats went downhill. Think about it, when Beats was its own company, the incentive was just, how do we get bigger? How do we keep the excitement up and keep selling as many Beats products as possible? But as soon as Beats is absorbed under Apple's umbrella, the incentives change. It's less about what's good for Beats, and it's more, how can Beats be used to make Apple more profit? Okay, there's one final thing though. One more thing which I think has really catalyzed this process of Beats drifting away into irrelevance. It's the increasing importance of reviews. Like, this isn't the only measure, but if you just look at the size of the largest YouTube tech channels back in 2010, like, drifting away into irrelevance. One more thing which I think has really catalyzed this process of Beats drifting away into irrelevance is the increasing importance of reviews. Like, this isn't the only measure, but if you just look at the size of the largest YouTube tech channels back in 2010 versus the largest tech channels in 2020, it's very clear that more than ever, consumers are informed. Consumers can very easily find out now whether a product is good or whether a product is bad. And this new fact-based market strongly favours brands with higher levels of technical performance. And so I think the natural trend that we're just going to start seeing over the years is that, as well as being marketed well, market strongly favours brands with higher levels of technical performance. And so I think the natural trend that we're just going to start seeing over the years is that, as well as being marketed well, for products to truly succeed, they also just need to be good. So that's what happened to Beats. They had their peak, and I don't think they're going to return to it. Thanks for watching. My name is Aaron. This is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Ну и что дальше? Нужно себя так думать. Ну наоборот только да. Да не.
Valorant, League of Legends, Rocket League, and more, which can be found on their site. It's pretty simple. All you gotta do is go over to your challenges and do whatever challenges you want to do, and you'll earn buff coins to redeem anything in the market. You can get whatever you are looking.
Ну наоборот, это...
So you know how when most companies, they open a new store, they kind of treat it like a massive deal. Well, Xiaomi, in a single day, opened not one, not two, but 1,000 stores. Crazy company. And seeing how fast they're expanding, I think it's time we address them. So these are my top 40 things about Xiaomi. From pretty cool to just ridiculous. Okay, so the name, Xiaomi. You might think that given what they sell, it's got something to do with gadgets, but it actually translates to little rice, which refers to a Buddhist concept all about starting with very little and working your way up to the top. And even their logo is a little bit more than it seems. There's the obvious fact that it says Mi, which is like a shorthand of Xiaomi, but it also legitimately stands for both mobile internet and, I'm not even making this stuff up, Mission Impossible. It actually says that on their website. And there's another layer. Flip this logo over, and Mi becomes the Chinese symbol for heart. Okay, if I had to define Xiaomi by just one characteristic, it would be community focused. You know how OnePlus has this whole attitude of treating their customers like fans? Well, I think there's a pretty good chance that they got this from Xiaomi. Like, we're talking about a company who hosts quiz tournaments with their most loyal followers, who hosts meetups everywhere from Nepal to the United States, who invited fans to the office for Christmas in Spain, a company who went out and cleaned up after flooding in Thailand alongside their Mi family. I do actually remember the day that Xiaomi came to the UK for the first time, and they basically had their entire community just run around the cities wearing orange t-shirts. Could you ever imagine, like, Samsung doing that? Probably not. I will say, though, that a lot of this fan stuff, it does occasionally tread the line into cringe territory. Like, I watched this one video where they were reading out a poem that someone wrote to Xiaomi.
You turn us on with your very best smartphone.
And I just can't. But yeah, for the most part, they know how to connect with people. And there's probably no better example of this than the Mi Fan Festival. It's an online event where Xiaomi basically launches a few new products, they slap discounts across their existing products, and they even create games for people to win things. And you're going to want to take a seat for this one. Because in the last festival they did, and just the Chinese branch of it, they managed to get 98 million people participating. And I just can't, for the light, create games for people to win things. And focused. You know how OnePlus has this whole attitude of treating their customers like fans? Well, I think there's a pretty good chance that they got this from Xiaomi. Like, we're talking about a company who hosts quiz tournaments with their most loyal followers, who host meetups everywhere from Nepal to the United States, who invited fans to the office for Christmas in Spain, a company who went out and cleaned up after flooding in Thailand alongside their Mi family. I do actually remember the day that Xiaomi came to the UK for the first time, and they basically had their entire community just run around the cities wearing orange t-shirts. Could you ever imagine, like, Samsung doing that? Probably not. I will say, though, that a lot of this fan stuff, it does occasionally tread the line into cringe territory. Like, I watched this one video where they were reading out a poem that someone wrote to Xiaomi.
You turn us on with your very best smartphone.
And I just can't. But yeah, for the most part, they know how to connect with people. And there's probably no better example of this than the Mi Fan Festival. It's an online event where Xiaomi basically launches a few new products, they slap discounts across their existing products, and they even create games for people to win things. And you're going to want to take a seat for this one. Because in the last festival they did, and just the Chinese branch of it, they managed to get 98 million people participating. And I just can't, for the life of me, wrap my head around the scale of that figure. 98 million people in one country in one day. That said, this is kind of Xiaomi's main hurdle right now. They're very China-focused. They have separate China-only launch events, like a good month before everyone else gets their phones. Many of their products they never even release in other countries. And while it almost looks like Xiaomi has their own religion in China, they've really struggled to cultivate that kind of fandom outside. I mean, just take Lei Jun, who's the chairman of Xiaomi. He has around 60,000 followers on Twitter, the global platform. How many do you think he has on the China-only Weibo? 100,000? 23 million. But this is changing. Xiaomi has taken a lot of steps recently to try and make itself a worldwide entity. Like how in 2013, they brought in Hugo Barra, a high...
Да наоборот, не видно. Да наоборот, не видно. Вот ты. Да наоборот, да наоборот. Наоборот, да.
profile Google employee to become vice president of Xiaomi, which it doesn't take a genius, is also in part to just give them this Western-friendly image. Or how in 2017, Xiaomi signed a collaboration deal with Nokia, such that both companies can use each other's patents. And there's actually more to this whole Nokia overlap. See, Xiaomi's cameras have been famously tailored to Asian consumers. The heavy beautification, the skin smoothing, the type of filters, and even the ability to change the shape of your face. These are things that the Asian market really appreciates. But at least from my experience, the Western market doesn't so much. So to try and cater for international tastes, Xiaomi's actually set up a camera lab in Finland, in the exact same city where Nokia's camera lab was, presumably to hire employees who know what they're doing. Also, internationally speaking, Xiaomi's always had a bit of a pronunciation problem, because, I mean, in most Western languages, we don't see words like this. Unless, of course, you're a viewer of this channel, in which case a sub to the channel would be me, Raculus. Nailed it. But anyways, the point I was making is that Hugo Barra, he actually helped with this pronunciation problem. So the way he described it to people was, if you want to say Xiaomi, then try and say show me, but say the show as if it was part of the word shower. So, shao me. So with this more global mindset, and with this whole hiring of more international employees, within just 10 years, Xiaomi's gone from a band of 8 guys in a room in China to now selling devices in 90 different countries. Honestly, it's stupid levels of growth. I couldn't believe this, but they've actually knocked off Apple to become the second biggest in Spain. And if you go to Ukraine, they're number 1. Xiaomi is just generally killing it in Eastern Europe, because I think it's just a market where people are less attached to Samsung and Apple, and much more just in pursuit of value. And even though Xiaomi hasn't broken into the US yet, there is promise. Like, Steve Wozniak himself, co-founder of Apple, is actually a bit of a Xiaomi fan, and he himself publicly said that Xiaomi products are good enough to break the American market. And that brings me to India. When Xiaomi first looked at India as a potential market, it really did seem like a mission impossible. Like, for starters, nobody there had heard of them, and there's also the fact that Xiaomi's entire business model at the time was based on online sales. But this market wasn't. They did it though. And within just 6 years, they were not just trading blows with Samsung for the absolute top position, but they've also managed to dethrone just about every single local brand. They provided better value, rock bottom prices, flash sales. Xiaomi even started manufacturing in India to save on shipping costs. And I think the most interesting thing is Xiaomi's attitude to profit. You know how there's this common idea towards things you buy in a store that, oh, it's great, but they probably made this for a fraction of the price. Well, that doesn't really work in the Android phone market, especially for Xiaomi, who apparently only takes away about $2 of profit per device sold. That's, in the UK at least, about enough to buy half a sandwich. Obviously, this still becomes a fairly substantial figure, given the number of devices they sell, but the way that Xiaomi really gets its profits up is through software. Like how on more budget devices, they bundle in adverts, which you can turn off, but just given the fact that they're on by default, and the fact that they're shown literally every time you install an app or use a first-party tool, you can see how they make a lot of money for them. And themes. Xiaomi actually invests a large sum in getting talented developers on board to make them. And they even pay these developers before they've even done anything, just so that they don't have to worry about making money and they can focus on being creative. Okay, so Xiaomi is spreading like wildfire. And you would think that for growth this fast, they must have started off with a bang. They must have hit the ground running. They must have launched with a phone so good that it blew people away. Not really. When Xiaomi started in 2010, they were an internet and software company. They saw how Android phones at the time lacked customization and looked kind of boring, so their first product was actually not a phone, but just a piece of software. It was MIUI. And it actually took Xiaomi a whole extra year after starting for them to come out with a phone that ran it. Do you want to know the most surprising thing, though, about Xiaomi's success? It's the fact that it's not just been an incredibly short time frame, but they've also managed to do this with just 20,000 full-time employees. That might sound like a lot, but Huawei has almost 200,000, and Xiaomi's main competitor right now, Samsung, almost 300,000. And so the only way that this growth has been possible is because Xiaomi doesn't waste time. They specifically say on their website how they're against never-ending meetings and lengthy processes, and there's also the ongoing debate as to whether they save time by also borrowing ideas. Put it that way. How their stores, for example, they look like carbon copies of Apple stores. The same color scheme, the same product spacing to make each thing seem important, even how they decorate their walls. But the thing that I think has caused even more of a stir is the products themselves. Some of Xiaomi's past products look so much like their Apple counterparts that can it really be a coincidence? Like, just compare the Xiaomi Mi 8 to the iPhone 10, the Mi Pad to the iPad, or Xiaomi's AirDots versus Apple's AirPods. But credit where due, as well as the more dubious, potentially clone products, Xiaomi does also have a much wider